I've been avoiding doing a workshop tutorial mostly because I'm depressed, but also, did I really just get a notification right as I started? God dang it. But also because there isn't just a direct way to teach workshop coding. So I'm going to go over the basic stuff. And from there, hopefully you can look up how to do something like a specific rule or action that you do not understand. First things first, I'm going to quickly go over everything that doesn't have to do with the workshop part, just so you know what to do with everything else. First up, you can do simple stuff like naming, changing it to invite only, moving people. That stuff you should be able to figure out on your own. Presets will have all your preset game modes and preset Overwatch game modes. If you want a template, for example, like you want to do an assault game mode, you can just do that and it will override all of your changes. From there, the lobby has a bunch of changes you can mess with. This is most useful for stuff like changing how many players are going to be on a team, and some various other stuff like if you want to talk to the enemy team, you can have match chat on. The modes are pretty self-explanatory. You can just turn on the modes or edit specific settings for the mode. Like let's say you want the point to capture immediately, you can turn it to 500%. And under all is a bunch of other cool settings, like if you want to do a, let's say, Trouble in Terrorist Town, you can turn off all the skins so you cannot tell who is who, assuming you turn off outlines also. Next up are the maps. I'm sure you know how to deal with that. If you want more maps rather than just Assault, just turn on the game modes right here. And as you can see, the maps are here. And then as for the heroes, I will actually be coming back to this because this is very, very useful. If you find a glitch in the Overwatch workshop, don't be surprised, basically. There's a lot of those, and there's a few charts that you can use on what is broken and what is not. But if you have done absolutely everything correctly and it just doesn't work, there is a small chance that it is just a glitch. And then I will get into what these little buttons over here are. I mean, I'm sure you can figure it out just by the names. But let's get into the fun part. So first things first, we're going to be making a custom hero for this little tutorial. So I'm going to call the mode custom hero. The description is going to be, I don't even know. And apparently this game mode's a 2v7, so we'll have to make this hero quite strong. So let's go over these little buttons up here. I have no idea what this button does. I've never clicked on it before. Apparently it brings you to the forums. Show diagnostics. This does something. It just tells you stuff, I guess. I honestly never press these buttons. Obviously, the most important button is the add rule button. It will add a rule, and that's where you do the funky coding stuff. The select all will select all, I'm sure you know. But now here is where you get to some interesting ones. Editing extensions, which is a big intimidating menu, will make it so you can turn on a bunch of different settings. For example, let's say I want custom projectiles, I can turn them on. The only issue is that now it will take away points from up here. As you saw, if I turn this off, it will let it so I can have 12 different players in the game mode. But if I turn it on, it will remove a player. This kind of sucks because it does really limit what you can do in the workshop, but apparently there's limitations, so unfortunately if you're wanting some of these bigger stuffs or a ton of them, let's say, turned on, you might even lose your 10th player somehow. For the most part, you don't really have to worry about this unless if you're going into more in-depth stuff in the workshop. And for the purposes of this, I will not be clicking anything. However, if you want to get more creative and you want, let's say, more effects, or you want to make projectiles that look like in-game projectiles, like let's say instead of a blue circle, you want Sigma's ball there, this is the menu where you would go to and play around with it. Next up is the variable names. I don't always name my variables, which I, again, will get into in a minute. However, if you do like naming your variables, here is where you would name them. And on top of that, if you do run out of variables, you can go down here and add more. As for subroutine names, I'm going to be real with you, I have no idea what this does. I've gotten this far without using them, and I know some other people use them. So unfortunately, I am not the person to talk about this, and this is a beginner guide, and I've gotten this far without knowing what it does, so we're really good. And finally, we get on to this part. I'm sure you just skipped to this part in the video, so let's get started. First thing, you can name it. We're going to be working on, let's say we're going to replace a cooldown. So we're going to call this ability 1. If you are trying to change a hero, I recommend changing this little setting to ongoing each player. What this does is makes it so it checks the player rather than checking it all the time. It also has some other things like checking when a player gets a kill or checking when they get a final blow, and then a few other things like dealing knockback and whatever a subroutine is. Quite honestly, this is the one you'll be using the most. And there's also something called ongoing global. This is something that you'll use for something like when you're doing a custom objective, for example, In the friendly fire game mode, I used this to do the scoreboard when I did the custom control point. However, when you're changing a hero, pretty much you always want to use ongoing each player because it will detect what that player is doing. Now, since we coincidentally are doing a 2 versus 7 game mode apparently, we're going to be changing the team to only Team T Hoshinkin. I didn't even... I kind of forgot I changed the name. But yeah, Team 1 is apparently Team TOS Shinshin. So it's going to be only affecting the players on that team. And on top of that, we're only going to have it affect Ana. Or I guess Reaper, because he's first. Why not? So what do we want our custom ability to do? Well, what's a fun little thing we can do? Let's do some sort of super jump. One of the most simple things you can do is something called an apply impulse. All this does is makes you go in the direction that you tell it to. So let's say we want him to have a super jump. So we do up in the little direction thing. The player is the event player. So basically what event player means is whoever triggers this code will be the target. Unfortunately, I should have started with the condition rather than the action. But basically, once the condition is met, it will apply an impulse to the person who started the condition, which will be the Reaper. It will go up, and the speed it will go at, let's say, we'll just put it at 50, I don't know. 50 is very close to the maximum. I'm pretty sure the maximum is 70? Yeah, it's 70. We'll just do 50 to make it easy. Our relative is a little bit confusing, so don't really worry about it. This is something you can play around with. And then cancel contrary motion isn't super important. So right now we have the code where Reaper will go up. However, we haven't told what the condition is to make Reaper go up. So it's very simple. We're going to add that. Now, since we're making a custom hero for this purpose, we might want to bind it to one of his buttons. First things first is press the little plus. And I'm going to set it to is button held ability 1. Basically, it will detect if the button is held, who is holding it, which is the event player, and then which button is being held, ability 1 equals true. So now when I press the button, it will apply an impulse upward. And make sure you're on the team that you made Reaper on. So we got our Reaper here, and now if I was to press shift, once I get out of spawn of course, boop, I will fly into the sky. Now you may realize I also use my Wraith form. That is because we never disabled it. So we would have to disable that in the workshop or in Reaper settings. But there is something I want to show you guys. I can spam it and keep flying over and over again, which means that we will need to do a cooldown. Now there is a few ways to do a cooldown. You can either change Reaper's actual cooldown, or you can use a player variable to track what the cooldown is. In Reaper's case, we can actually do both because he does not have a secondary fire, which means that we would need to use a player variable or something else to track the cooldown, since he doesn't have a cooldown as a secondary fire. However, first we're going to change the ability cooldown manually. However, the first thing that I am going to do is disable his Wraith form. So ongoing each player, Reaper on team 1, we're going to disallow the button for ability 1. This is going to make it so he can no longer press it. If he tries to press it, nothing will happen except for, of course, our custom code. This does, of course, cause an issue when you switch heroes because the button will still be disallowed. So what we're going to do is add another rule, ongoing each player, and we're going to do something a little bit fancy. So if hero of event player does not equal, basically what this little equal sign means is does not equal, when it has an exclamation mark, does not equal the hero, Reaper. By the way, this is getting into some complicated stuff. I just wanted to add it in because, you know, I see the issue, so I have to fix it. So when the hero of event player is not Reaper, then allow the button ability 1. Once you start working on more complex game modes, you'll have to find a different workaround for this, but for now this will work. And if you want to name them, we'll do Reaper, disallow, and other heroes allow. So now when you're Reaper, your button's going to be disabled. When you're not Reaper, it will come back. Wherever it is, there it is. However, this does not fix our issue of it being spammable. It just fixes our issue of making Reaper go into Wraith form. So we're going to go to add an action, and we're going to add a cooldown. We're going to set the ability cooldown to, let's say, 8 seconds and change it to ability 1. From here, we're going to actually move it to the top just to make sure that you only use it once. However, setting the ability cooldown will not fix it being spammable because we have to add a condition that makes it not spammable. So we got to create a condition, type in cooldown, and we need to check if the ability cooldown of ability 1 equals the number 0. So basically this means that if the ability is off cooldown and the button ability 1 is held, then it will do this. If the cooldown is still going down, then the ability cooldown will stop it from happening. Really, coding is just a bunch of if-then statements, which is really, really cool, because that's what people tell you about coding, and it's actually true. So when we go out here and I press shift, I fly into the air, and right now I'm still pressing shift, and it's not working. And you'll tell that I'm telling the truth, because as soon as it goes off cooldown, it happens again. So now we have our new Reaper custom super jump. However, like I said earlier, let's say you want to make a completely new ability for secondary fire, like shooting out a little grenade, which I don't want to get into custom projectiles yet, but they're really cool, so I'm going to. So since we cannot do this ability cooldown stuff, we'll have to do our own new one using variables, which I'm going to do what I said I wouldn't do earlier. I'm going to name the variables, and I'm going to call this secondary fire cooldown. However, apparently that's not viable, so we're gonna delete the spaces. So let's call this secondary fire. And of course, we're gonna change it to ongoing each player. Change it to Reaper, and change it to Team TL, whatever. And now I actually have something really cool that I can show you. If we go to the old one, the ability 1, we can actually click on is button held true, copy, go back down, and paste. Really neat trick. And then from here, change it to secondary fire. Reaper does not have a secondary fire, but it can still detect your secondary fire button. From here, we want to create a custom projectile. Now, like I said, custom projectiles are something I actually learned more recently compared to everything else. So this might take a second for you to learn, because it took me a second to learn. So we're going to create a custom projectile. So create projectile. And from here is a bunch of stuff. Now, the first thing is that the projectile type is going to be an orb, because we have to turn on the extension for more projectiles. Like I said, I'm not going to turn that on yet, but I will just to show you how it works. From here, we need to say who owns the projectile, which luckily if you hover over stuff, it will tell you what it does, which is very, very useful. So the orb is going to be owned by the event player, which is the Reaper, since that is who is summoning the projectile. The start position and direction, you can change those if you want. However, something really cool about projectiles is that if you leave them by themselves, it will go in a straight line. And since I want it to go in a straight line, I'm going to leave it like that. You can ignore relative, and I want it to do damage, so I'm going to leave it on damage. The effective team can be whatever you want, but because I'm trying not to do friendly fire, we're going to do opposite team of, and here's something very important. Change this to team of event player. If you do opposite team of all the teams, it will just do damage to everyone still, probably. So you got to change it to opposite team of the person who summoned the projectile. From here, let's see what this does. It's the amount of damage, so we'll leave it at 50 for simplicity. How big the projectile is, so 1. And if we want an explosion, I personally want an explosion, so we'll add it like a 5 explosion. We'll make it really overpowered. When it explodes, it's going to have a little explosion effect, so we're going to do, let's say, good explosion. And then the sound, we'll just leave the explosion sound. The oversize is how big the projectile will be. So let's say you have a Sigma ball, and you want it to be really big. You can do a 1, right? And it will be a giant Sigma ball, which is really cool. The speed is how fast it goes. I want it to be faster, so we'll do 20. I'm pretty sure if you do the maximum amount, it will look pretty fast, just like a real bullet. But we'll keep it really slow. The lifetime is how many seconds it will be until it expires. I'm not sure if it does the damage at the end when it expires, because I haven't done a projectile like that before. So we'll just leave it at 5 seconds. The impulse is how much knockback it will do. Once it hits, we'll do a ton of knockback, because I like knockback. And then you can do a ricochet, just like the storm arrows or scatter arrow for Hanzo. We'll make it bounce 5 times. I don't think it will bounce that much, but we'll get to, I guess, test if it expires and does damage. And then the gravity, if you want it to go up or down, I'm going to do, we'll say 5, so it's like a little ball. If you guys don't know, Reaper was actually going to have a secondary fire that was like a little grenade. So that's what I was trying to recreate. However, before we go in-game, I'm going to actually do a custom projectile just because I want to. So if we go down to here, projectiles, okay. Sadly, we lost our unique hero, but that's okay. And then from here, we can go here. And as you can see, we got a lot of projectiles. I want to do a Sigma Hyper Spear just because I'm weird like that. And then I'm going to actually go down, like I said, and make it a giant Sigma ball because I like Sigma's balls. After restarting the game mode, it will actually apply the changes. So make sure every change you reset. Let's choose Reaper and let's throw Sigma's balls out. I think it's too big. Oh, yep, okay. So I'm a little concerned at what is happening. I think it is bouncing because it's so big. Yeah, it is. Okay. So I'm a little concerned what's going on. I'm going to be real with you. We might have to change some of the settings. So let's just change the oversize back down to 1 or back down to 0. Remember, testing is the best way to fix stuff. If you turn off your brain and just start spamming stuff, usually it works. But as you can see, there we go. Now it's working as intended. So that's really cool. Like a little bouncy ball. That's actually a really cool ability. And then it explodes after, I think, 5 ricochets. Kind of hard to see because it flies away from you. Real quickly, just for science, I'm going to see if it expires after 5 seconds. And if it explodes. So yeah, when it expires, it does explode. That's something that I did not know. However, you may have noticed, I can spam it as much as I want, which seems a little bit broken. And yes, I can confirm this is a little bit broken, even though the knockback is making it a little bit difficult to hit stuff. Oh, I've killed someone. So we're going to unfortunately have to put a cooldown on this ability, which means that I'm going to be using the player variable. The player variables are a great way to track information, and that's how I use them. So just like we did with the ability 1, I'm going to go to here, and there's something called a global variable. The global variable, as with the global, when we were talking about this right here, is going to be something that affects every single player in the game. Anyone can edit this, anyone can adjust this. I kind of just said the same thing there twice in a row. While if it is a player variable, it only stores that information for a player. Basically, to dumb down global variables versus player variables, if you're doing it on a global scale, choose global. If it affects a player, please do player, because it will just work better. Global, like I said, I use mostly for custom objectives, and if there's something in the map that has to do with everyone and not just a player. Like, I have had a damaging circle running around the place, and it affects everyone, so I used it as a global variable. While I have to track, let's say, this Reaper's cooldown, so we're going to choose set player variable, and we're going to change the secondary fire cooldown to be 8 seconds, let's say. So you can shoot the grenade every 8 seconds, and we're going to only affect Reaper. Let's move that to the top. And then from here, just like we did with the cooldown, we're going to go to create condition, type in player variable, and then when secondary fire cooldown equals the number 0, then it will allow it to shoot. So let's test that. Also, just to mention, as I said, it is very hard to teach through workshop because it's not really like a straightforward path. It's just whatever you want to do. So sorry if I'm going a little bit all over the place. If you have questions, you can join my Discord if you want, but it's not exactly a workshop Discord. So you can go to the official Discord workshop. However, I recommend figuring out stuff on your own by control Fing and typing in what your problem is. However, I'm sure some people are willing to help you. So now I'm going to shoot my ball, and as you can see, I can only shoot one. However, you might have realized that after 8 seconds, I still can't shoot again, and that's because we haven't done the cooldown. So let's get into that. I personally am going to do a very simple one, so we're going to make sure to type in all our settings. We're going to call this secondary cooldown. So when the player variable, secondary fire cooldown, does not equal the number 0, then we're going to set player variable, and we're going to have to do some math here. We're going to set the player variable to subtract from the current player variable by 1. It is that simple. Basically, all this will do is every time it will check when the secondary fire is not 0, and it will subtract it by 1. From there, we want to wait 1 second, and then we're going to loop if true. Wait and loop if true is a very, very cool combo. First off, if you don't have a wait here, it will just crash the game, so don't do that. Oh, by the way, you can turn code on and off. Let's say you don't want to delete it, but you want to turn it off. This is how. But let's not crash the game mode, so we're going to have a wait here. And this will simulate subtracting by 1. So since up here, we set the cooldown to 8, down here, it will notice that, hey, this number is not 0 anymore. So I'm going to subtract it by 1, wait a second, and if it's still not 0, then I'm going to do it again. And it's going to do it until it is 0. Now that we have completed the secondary fire, if I press right click, it will shoot out a little orb. And when I start spamming it, it will not shoot out an orb. But if I go to the cooldown, there we go, it does. Now it does not say what the cooldown is. So that means we have to choose how we are going to show the cooldown. There is a few ways to do this, and I think the most simple way is to have a HUD effect on our screen. HUDs are unfortunately one of my weak points, so this is going to be a little bit rough. I'll figure it out as we go. Something really cool that you can do is that you can actually use this Reaper disallow to pop up the HUD only on Reaper. So if we go to create HUD text, we'll get all of this stuff, but we want to change this to only the event player because we do not want everyone in the match seeing our cooldown. That'd be a little weird. I want to call it secondary cooldown. This will be what it says next to the name. And then from here, we're going to actually be typing in player variable secondary fire cooldown. This means that wherever we type this little 0, it will show the cooldown, which I will be putting here, and we're going to hear me undeafen because I am in a Discord call, and that just happens to be my deafen button. So now, wherever we put the HUD text, it will say secondary fire cooldown, and then it will put whatever number the player variable is, because we put the little replacement there, I guess. This is a much better way to put it. The value that will be converted to text and used to replace 0. We don't need to worry about all of this stuff. It's going to be at the left side of our screen. It's going to be at the top, so it's a 0. We want it to be white. We want white, why not? Actually, we'll do black because it's Reaper. And there we go. That's pretty much all we need. And then if we want to destroy it, luckily, since it's only one player in the entire match with it, we can actually do something called destroy HUD text, and we can destroy all HUD text, but we're not going to do that. And it will do the last text ID. So basically, when the hero switches off of Reaper, it will destroy the last text ID for them. Luckily, the workshop is smart enough to detect from different players' HUD text, so this will destroy the last text created by the player, or if it's used globally, it will destroy the last global one. Now, something I did not mention is that technically, if you switch heroes, this cooldown might not happen because you're no longer Reaper, so your secondary fire will still be on cooldown. That is something you'll have to fix as you run into those issues. But as you work on the workshop more and more, you'll find these glitches out, and you'll be able to fix them to work out the kinks of the game mode. Just like my kink for Wesker in the Resident Evil franchise. Anyways, what were we doing? Oh yeah, creating HUD text. If you ever forget what you were doing, just feel free to restart the match, and sometimes it will come on your screen. For example, since the last thing we did was create a HUD, at the top left we see secondary cooldown 0, and then if I was to press, oops, wrong one. If I was to secondary fire, it will start counting down. Now, it's a little hard to see. I'm very sorry about that. I actually probably should change it to a different color. So now it is much more visible. If I secondary fire, it will apparently immediately go to 7 because it immediately detects that I minused the cooldown. But, you know, that's okay. We can adjust that by just changing the order of the actions. And when it gets 0, I can immediately shoot it. That time it somehow went to 8. Like I said, the workshop is a little weird. I don't know why it does that. Maybe because it was still on cooldown. I actually think I know why it did that, but I'm not gonna bother explaining it because it's the workshop. You'll figure it out. Boom. I just got lifesteal for knocking that Mei off the map. That's actually really cool. I don't think there's any way to disable the passives, so you're gonna have to figure those out as you go. And sorry for saying you'll just have to figure it out on your own or look it up on your own, but that really is what the workshop is about. Once you know the basics, you can kind of do whatever you want and feel free to check out everything. For example, I can probably just scroll randomly through here and I'll find something I don't know about. Like I have pretty much never used modifies player variable at index. That is something a little bit too complicated for me. However, something less complicated, like pressing a button, I could probably look it up. Especially I could go into the Discord, just do a Control F, just do press button, and then I can figure out what that does based off of what other people have said about it. Another thing that I sometimes do to figure out what something does is I will import somebody else's game mode, see what they did for it, and then change what I need to fit whatever they did. However, if I ever do this, I do mention that because I like to give credit since I'm doing YouTube videos off of it. However, since you guys are probably just doing this for fun, you guys don't have to worry about that. Feel free to pirate all of my game modes. I do not care at all, and I know a lot of other people do not care also. I know a lot of people have actually mentioned how I learned how to do the workshop. I learned this from a Shrewsbury back when the workshop was just coming out. And then I just came back to Overwatch 2, and I started picking it up again and just kind of learned how to... Oh, look, Parsifal's online. And I just kind of learned how to do it from there. I just mostly looked stuff up, mostly went to the Overwatch Workshop Discord, did a Control F, and then figured it out from there. And luckily I have Zuperslime who taught me a lot of stuff also. However, let's say you want to save your custom hero because you think he's amazing or she's amazing or they're amazing. I'm gonna get canceled one day. The way that you would do that is very simple. You go up here to save preset. Now I would like to not save over my other stuff, but let's say you want to save over a game mode. You would click on it and then you could save over it, but I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna call it custom Reaper. And then I can save it, and it will be over here. There's my custom Reaper. Where is he? There he is. And let's say I crash or something, which, by the way, there is an autosave feature right here. Make sure not to accidentally overwrite that, just in case you do crash. But let's say I want to go play the Thomas the Tank Engine gameplay. Then it will put up Thomas the Tank Engine. But then I can go back to my preset, go to custom Reaper, click, and it will put the stuff back. Actually, here is a better representation. So if I go to Thomas, there's all that Chinese stuff. I hope that's Chinese or else again, I'm going to get canceled. And then Custom Reaper Workshop, there you go. By the way, just to make sure that it works, I'm going to also test the switching heroes. So at the top left, I have my HUD text. Then when I switch heroes, then when I switch heroes, it's no longer there. And then if I go back to Reaper, it is there because we coded in it destroying the HUD text and all that. Personally, I like to leave the HUD text up there all the time, just in case, even if a hero doesn't use it. But again, you guys can make that decision for yourself when you get to that. However, something I will show you guys is how to import a code. If you know the 5-letter number combination for their game mode, you can go up here to the import code and type it in here. I think I have one in here, which looks like my hot takes video. And if I press OK, then it will load in all of my stuff. Now it gives me an error because
much later.
I don't know what's broken. If this ever happens to you, my best advice would be just to quit, settings, import, and then try it again. There we go. Now it's still not working. Why is it not working? Oh, off. So the reason that's not working is because the holiday maps were on. I probably should fix that before people gay sex. So yeah, if there's ever an error with the maps, go to the maps and turn off the maps that are holiday related. That was why it was not working. I did not know that was a thing until now, and now I feel really bad for anyone who have been trying to play my game modes. I did not know that was a problem. But as you can see, I have all of these rules here that I can just steal from myself, and I personally want gay sex. So we're going to take gay sex, copy it, and then we're going to actually load in our own game mode. Let's go to Custom Reaper, and then Workshop, and we're going to paste it. And as you can see, I have stole gay sex. Hopefully this little tutorial really helped you guys. I did this kind of out of a whim, just because I wanted to. Hopefully I don't die here, because, okay, well, whatever. But I really didn't know what to do for a workshop tutorial, just because there's so much to go over. So I just went over anything that I thought was important for the very, very basics. However, there are so many rules that I did not cover, so many conditions I did not cover. However, hopefully with this, you can do some of the stuff that you want to do. I have seen some stuff that people wanted to do, and they said, hey, how do I do this? And I would tell them, but, you know, it's kind of nice putting it in a little video like this. Like, let's say somebody wants a very, very basic, because this is truly very basic overview of it. This is unfortunately one of those scenarios where you just have to look stuff up as you get to it. For example, I did not go over the status effects, which I could do easily too. I could easily show you, but it's a little bit too much for a workshop video to go over every single condition and action. So if you guys want me to, I will go over every single condition and action that I know in a separate video. But this is the very basics, so if you want to explore on your own, or you don't want to know everything about the workshop, this is a good starting point. And like I said, you can go over to someone like a Shrewsbury who hasn't posted for a while, but, you know, their tutorials still are good even if they're a little outdated. Also, even though I said at the beginning as a joke, I haven't been doing very well recently, so it is how it is. And I'm going to hopefully put a little bit more effort into my videos in 2024. But I just got called in recently, and I couldn't mentally handle doing a bigger video this week, so we're gonna do a very simple one. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Tell me what I should do next. Tell me how I can improve, because I'm surely not improving right now. And I will literally go over every single rule and condition that I know about in a giant video that takes like an hour of me explaining like this, because I'm honestly, it's too much effort to write a script, so I'll do bullet points, and then hopefully I do it well. Also, you guys seem to like it when I get a Discord call in the middle of my videos, so, you know, it is how it is. But I hope you guys enjoy, like, and subscribe, and I'm now gonna go get hit by traffic.